Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the 86 F's to Give podcast. I'm your host, Al, and I'm so grateful that you are here with me for another episode. If you are watching this, Puda is up here sitting next to me, and yeah, hopefully he will hang out with us for a little bit. But if you're not watching, you should totally go to YouTube or watch on Spotify because he is just the freaking cutest, even though he can't see right now because he needs a haircut. But yeah, welcome back to another episode. I'm so grateful you guys are all here. We have finally reached episode 20, which is just insanity. We are over a third through the year, like the year since I started this. Like 17 episodes is about a third of a year if we're going off of the 52 weeks, right? And we're at 20, so we're through a third of the year, more than a third of the year of this episode or of this podcast, which is crazy. So yeah, I'm just really, really grateful that you are all here with me. Today we are back in the Breakfast Nook. We haven't been in the Breakfast Nook since Carly was on. We are actually doing some exciting things to the podcast studio. Yep, I said studio. All right, I did say studio indeed. We're getting a little bit of a set. All right, we're going to set up a nice little set so that it actually looks like a podcast, and it'll just be, more professional looking. It'll have a signature look. People will be able to recognize the 86 F's to Give podcast when they see the set up, and I'm really excited. I'm waiting for Christmas to come to see if a few of the things I put on my Christmas wish list for the studio were purchased for me. If not, I will go ahead and make that purchase and then finish up the studio. So I'm thinking maybe you guys will see it before the new year. If not, definitely the first episode in the new year will be in the new setup. So get excited. Some crazy things are happening around here. But yeah, for this episode and maybe a couple more will be in the Breakfast Nook, if that's all right with you. I think that is all of my disclaimers and welcomes. Yeah, let's hop into today's topic. Today we are talking about our inner children, our inner child, and we are 86ing, ignoring, dimming, shaming, hiding our inner child, right? And I'm really excited to talk about this because I feel like recently I have realized how much I value my inner child, and also I've been reflecting on what younger versions of myself would think about current me, and that's been really healing and motivating, and I wanted to talk about it today because I think it is kind of the perfect time of year to talk about it, because the holiday season I feel like is so like child driven. Like we create all this magic for the children in our lives, and I think it also brings out our inner child, and we go back to, traditions that we've been doing since kids, and seeing people that you would see a lot when you were a kid, or going to people's houses that you would normally go to when you were younger, and things like that. And I think this time of year just brings up so much of both good and bad feelings, because, no one's childhood is perfect. And so there's a lot of traumas maybe that get brought up, or, happy memories that get brought up. So I felt like this was the perfect time of year to kind of talk about this, as we are getting down to Christmas next week, and Hanukkah starts the same day, and Kwanzaa's the day after, and then New Year's, and, we're just getting down to the nitty gritty of the holiday season. So it felt right to talk about this today. I also wanted to say that I think it's important to talk about our inner child, because so much of who we are and why we are the way we are was created or founded as we were children, right? Like the things that make us anxious, the things that make us mad, the things that make us sad, that all stems from our childhood. And so as adult versions of ourselves, we kind of have to heal that version of ourselves in order to not feel those same feelings 20, 30, 40, 50 years later, right? And so I think it's a really important conversation to have any time of year, but this time of year felt right, as for the reasons I mentioned earlier. But I'm really excited to kind of dive in. I did a lot of research because I like to be knowledgeable when I'm sharing things like this with you all, but I also have a lot of my own thoughts and feelings and ideas. So we'll kind of intermix with the research, the facts, and my personal experiences and feelings as well. So first I wanted to just define what our inner child is. And I think there's kind of two ways people typically look at it. First is kind of referring to those childlike aspects of someone's personality, right? Like they're goofy, they maybe would sometimes get referred to as a little immature, or just like those feelings and aspects of someone's personality that children typically have. But also psychologists talk about this, and therapists use it as a form of way to heal people's current traumas. Well, that actually, once you get down to the nitty gritty, it's actually childhood trauma. And that's because they look at our inner child as like a part of our psyche, that a young part of our a subconscious, that it holds so many memories and traumas and really influences how we think and act as adults without us even realizing it. And that's another reason I want to talk about it today, is because I think so many of us just go through our lives and kind of, including myself, and not really like understanding why we're feeling the way we are or why we are the way we are. And I just love to kind of dig deeper and reflect and realize what is actually causing me to feel this way? Because it seems like this little thing that just happened is so small. Like, why am I feeling so deeply and so big about this thing that just happened that, on the outside seems so small? And it's because it's actually triggering our inner childhood trauma, right? And so I think it's all a really important conversation to have and to begin having here with us, with our little safe community here. And also research says that we all have an inner child in us, right? We were all little babies and children and toddlers and teenagers and preteens and, all the things until we became 18. And, I argue that you're not even really an adult at 18, legally maybe, but there's still so much that we learn, and we still have a lot of those childlike aspects of our personalities, through college or just those years of our lives. And I think so many, those are some of the most pivotal years of our lives, but we don't even realize that that's kind of going to shape our future and shape how we are in our adult life, and, how we react to things and how we feel about things. And so, yeah, we all have one, but I think a lot of times we don't realize it, right? So another reason we're talking about it today. And so I wanted to dive into a few ways that our inner child may like take over at times, or how it just manifests in our adult lives. And the first one that really stuck out to me when I was reading a bunch of articles was through fear, right? So sometimes you have an experience as a child and it feels really, really, really scary because one, you're a little child and you don't know how to help yourself or fix it, or, save whatever the issue is. But also it's probably like one of the first times that this exact situation is happening to you, because you're 5 and you got lost at the mall for the first time and you think you're never going to find your family again. That feels like the end of the world, right? And so that becomes trauma because it's so big and feels so scary. Whereas like, I'm 26 now. If I lose my mom in the mall, I'm not going to freak out because I know I can call her. I know I can, find her somehow. I have her location on her phone. Like, things, it's just different. It's not going to cause me trauma now. It might give me a little anxiety in the moment because my inner child is like, oh wait, where are the people that I know? But then you are able to kind of calm yourself down and be like, okay, no, I know how to fix this. Whereas as kids, we're so helpless sometimes. Like, we don't have a phone. We don't know how to get back to our mom. And so it's really scary and causes trauma. So that fear can kind of transfer over into our adult lives. If people have a scary situation in a pool or in an ocean or a lake or something, and then that causes them to be afraid of, getting in pools, oceans, or lakes as an adult. And like, that is so real. Like I'm watching a bunch of old seasons of Survivor, and there's like at least one person every season that's like, yeah, I'm not doing that challenge. Like I don't know if I, can get in the water like that. Or they say that they learn how to swim weeks before coming on Survivor so that they, could overcome that fear or things like that. And it's like, they talk about their childhood traumas as the reason as them not wanting to do this challenge or get in the water or whatever. And it's like, that's so true, even though we are like 6 times the size of our child self or whatever. And like, we, would probably be able to get ourselves out of this scary situation. It still causes fear and anxiety, right? And that leads me into the next one of, how it kind of manifests in our adult lives is anxiety, right? And like, I know I personally still experience anxiety about the same types of things as an adult as I did as a kid, right? And like, as a kid, I would get nervous before like dance recitals or dance competitions or cheer competitions or tests or, anything where I had to perform, right? And so that is the same situations I get anxiety in now. I get anxious about presenting things to people or talking in front of a big crowd or doing this podcast. Sometimes I get anxious sharing things on social media. And, it's like anytime where you're putting yourself out there for other people to make their own opinions about you and your art and what you're presenting or what you're putting out there causes me anxiety, because that's how the anxiety I felt as a kid. And obviously I'm doing different things, but it's like coming up in the same way. And I think, anything that caused us anxiety as kids, just like the fear thing, and just like when I mentioned, getting lost in the mall when you're a kid, like obviously, now that like that doesn't need to cause you as much anxiety as it did as a kid, but it'll still trigger it, right? And you'll still be like, oh, I'm feeling a little nervous. Or sometimes you get anxious and you don't even know why, or at least for me, I'll like be like nauseous, which is typically how my anxiety presents itself physically, is like, other than thoughts, I get nauseous and I am like, why am I so nauseous? And it's because something, I'm ignoring something that my inner child is trying to tell me that we're afraid of, right? Or that we're scared of or we're anxious about. So it's really, really interesting once you kind of, reading these articles was just like so interesting and eye-opening to me, because it's definitely something that I've been talking about and learning about more. I have a couple, obviously my mom is a therapist. I have a couple of therapist friends, and they talk about like doing inner child work and how, a lot of people go to therapy for their anxieties and things, and how doing that inner child work is one of the biggest ways to kind of help with your current anxiety, is fixing your childhood anxiety and trauma. And then another way that it'll manifest in your adult life is when you want to avoid like certain people or situations or places. Again, these all kind of go hand in hand, right? But like for me, I know I really struggled being in groups of three, like 3 friends, including me as a kid. And so, my mom wouldn't even let me have 2 friends over. It was either 3 friends were coming over so that there would be 4 of us, or just 1 friend so that it would just be me and that friend, because I knew either I was going to get left out and I would feel bad, or one of the 3 of us was going to get left out and then I would still feel bad that like that person feels bad. And it was just never the most peaceful, stress-free time for me. And so my mom literally like wouldn't allow me to be in groups of 3 if we could help it. And I find myself still trying to avoid that situation now. And, I recently just lived with 2 girls and love them both to death. And they all know that us all 3 living together probably wasn't the best idea. No, we had a blast, but like, it was just hard at times. Like 2 of us would agree on something and the other one wouldn't, or we would 3 people just live very differently, and it's a lot of people's lives that need to like line up and coincide with each other, and it's just hard. And now living alone, I'm like, oh, I don't think I ever want to live with 2 other people again, and probably not 4 either, but like it's either going to be one other person and that's going to be my partner, or I'm just going to be living alone, and I think it's something to reflect on and be like, and I've been doing a lot of reflecting on that time of my life, living with them. And I feel like a lot of the hard things about it was because of how I dealt with groups of 3 as a child, right? And I like never really processed that or why that was hard for me. And so as an adult, I was just like, okay, like this feels hard, but I don't really know how to fix it or what to do. And that's because I had never processed that as a kid. I kind of just avoided it. And so now, as an adult, I'm trying to kind of avoid those situations as well, and, do the work to process why that's so hard or why that's so difficult at times, because it's a very valid thing. I think it's a thing that a lot of people experience, just different groups and different personalities. It's hard to mesh them all together at times. And so that's just an example that came up for me with the like avoiding certain situations. And it's something I've been reflecting on recently a lot because of recently I've been living alone. So and that's an example that came up for me. I hope that makes sense. And some ways that research kind of mentioned to help work on healing your inner child is when something happens that makes you feel a certain way that's not like a positive, or I mean, I guess either, when something, oh my God, Puda's climbing behind me, sorry. When something happens that, triggers something in you, whether it's a positive or a negative emotion, like take a minute and reflect on why you're feeling that way. Like try to ask yourself questions, journal, talk to someone. A lot of times, like I have a really hard time in like the end of January, February months. And like, it's just always been that way. And I'm trying to not just say, oh, this is my sad time of the year. Like, I'm just going to be sad, because I don't want to just be sad. Right. But I also want to give myself grace, because it's just a hard time of year for me. And my mom always reminds me of childhood trauma that happened this time of year that my body just holds on to. And I've done a lot of work to process it, and, went to therapy and all these different things, and not going to get all into it today, but like I have done so much work to be okay and process what happened to me. And yet I still have my sad time of the year, or this hard time of the year for me. And so I'm saying that because, I have done the work to reflect and realize why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, but it still is hard at times. And that's just a testament to how much work does have to get put into, healing your inner child and healing childhood trauma. Because again, as a kid, it's so much bigger than, maybe some of the things that will happen to us. Well, it feels bigger than some of the things that may happen to us as adults, because we know as adults, like, we'll get through hard things. Whereas, as kids, it's like, okay, actually the world is exploding tomorrow. So yeah, that's kind of one thing that you can kind of do to start healing your inner child, is to reflect on, why am I feeling this way? Because I think that also just makes you have a little bit of peace when you understand why you're feeling the way you're feeling. Because I know for me, when I'm just sad or I'm crying and I have no idea why I'm crying, or I'm anxious, or I'm nauseous, or whatever, that causes me more anxiety and more stress. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to freaking be sad anymore. Like, what is wrong, so that I can work on it, right? And so when you do that work, and you sit down and you journal, or you talk to someone, or you go to therapy and you do the work, right? It gives you a little bit of peace knowing the explanation or the root cause of it. And then you're able to be like, okay, let's do the work on this now that I know what I have to work on. And then another thing that you can do is kind of shift the focus from feeling like you have to perform all the time to just being. You're just existing. You're just a human, and you're creating this life, and you're just doing life, right? Instead of being like, I have to perform my life. It's really just, you're just existing. And I think changing that perspective is literally impossible sometimes. But like, if you think like, okay, I'm just like doing what I have to do, not have to do, but get to do in this life, to just exist and get by and to have a happy life. Like, instead of thinking, oh, I have to perform to get a raise, or I have to perform to have a lot of friends. Like, no, you're just existing. You're doing life the way that you want to do it. And if people want to reward you with their friendship or a raise or whatever, and like, obviously you have to work hard to get certain things. And I'm not saying anything like, oh, you don't have to try to get a raise or whatever, like, of course. But I think when you focus so much on the performance aspect of your life, it puts a lot of pressure on yourself, and to just like be the best performer all the time, when really you're just trying to be a human and just trying to exist through this crazy freaking world that we live in. So changing that mindset might be helpful. And then obviously, like we kind of talked about a little bit already, is actually doing the work to process your childhood trauma. So once you realize why you're feeling the way you are, and you kind of shift the focus from, things that cause you anxiety, to kind of just being like, okay, I'm a human and I'm going to feel these things, and I'm just going to move through life feeling them. Now you get to actually do the work, right? And whether that's therapy, talking to a friend, journaling, writing letters to your younger self. There's so many little techniques you can do that, or writing letters to people that hurt you when you were a child. Like, there's so many creative ways you can get that trauma out of you, to then begin doing the work and processing what actually happened to you and why you are the way you are. And that not only will heal that part of you and start to heal that trauma, but it'll also make your inner child not feel so neglected and like forgotten about. And I know some people might think it's silly to like talk about your inner child like this, like it's another like being, but it really truly is. Like we're all children. We're all somebody's child, and that child lives in us for our entire lives, and it's important to not neglect it, right? And the final thing, there's so many things that research says to do to kind of not ignore your inner child, but the final thing that I want to talk about today is finding people that bring your inner child out in a safe environment, right? Like not, maybe in college your inner child gets brought out in kind of like a reckless way, which is fine. We all go through those years. Everybody, kind of experiences that rebellious, reckless time of their life that, might be referred to as childlike. But I think, once you get older and you kind of want to have people that you can lean on, you want to find people that bring out your child self, in the best way, right? Like people that make you feel safe, make you feel like you can be goofy around them, your truest, authentic self around them, people that make you feel safe to open up to them and to work on healing your inner child with them and say, hey, what you just said to me actually is like really triggering my inner child and making me feel this, and this because this happened to me as a kid. Like having people that you can actually like share those things with will be so beneficial to adult you and child you. And, it's hard to find people that you can trust, but we all have those people that, even if it's one person, we have somebody that we can kind of lean on, and, going to them when you are triggered or when you're feeling something and kind of working through it is so important. And yeah, it's just another way that you can kind of begin the healing process for the traumas that we've had from all different years in our lives, right? I also wanted to quickly touch on the first part of the definition that is just kind of like those childlike personalities, right? And we talked about this a little bit in the work episode, the having fun at work episode, because I struggle with not wanting people to look at me like I am a child and, like I'm just here to have fun and, I goof off and laugh all day and whatever, because, and again, I want to say that I'm really lucky and privileged that I work in sports because we do get to have fun and, watch sports games and work athletics events for a living. And so I truly have a really special environment where, goofing off and maybe having a little bit more fun is a little more welcomed and, normal. Especially I work with like the social media aspect of it, and like we're trying to hop on the trends and have fun and, make silly videos and stuff. So like I get to have fun so much, but yeah, I still struggle with not wanting people to look like, I don't want people to look at me like that's all I am or all I do, because it's not. I have such professional and serious and deep sides to me as well. And it's hard to balance that, right? But you, again, want to find a work environment that allows you to balance that and also encourages that balance and isn't just all work is all we ever do. We don't laugh, we don't have fun, we don't get to know each other. And of course is not on the other side, like all we do is goof off and don't get anything done. You want to find somewhere that encourages a balance of that. And you also want to encourage a balance of that within yourself, because even if your workplace is all work, that's all we ever do, kind of being that person that's like, okay, let's maybe do an icebreaker at this staff meeting, like I said in the work meeting or work episode, or let's do one little round of a game before we start this so we can get to know each other or laugh a little and show some personality and some humanness to all of us before we just sit down and work on this project for the next 3 hours or whatever, And sometimes it takes us young work people, young professionals, work people, to kind of be the ones to do that. And I think it's such a cool task to take on, because not only am I naturally like that, but I want to encourage other people to let that side of them out. And, I'll take on the challenge. I will take on the challenge of making our like older generation administrative people laugh once this week, like that is my goal. And I have yet to be told that it's too much or that it's, it needs to be toned down or I need to be more serious. And I think that's because people realize the benefit of, having those childlike aspects of your personalities come out in everyday life while still being able to get work done, right? Like who said I can't laugh while I'm doing a little bit of work, right? Who said? And I think it's also important to let that side of you out because to me, it feels like the base of connection, right? Like laughter, having fun, realizing you can like be goofy with somebody. Whenever somebody's like, oh, what are you looking for in a partner or a friend? Everyone's always like a sense of humor. Like that is always on the list. And I think, having that interaction that is so like childlike to begin heals a part of us and also creates that connection and that bond that you want to have when you have those safe people around you. And I think when you hide that, you're only like self-sabotaging yourself from making, those strong connections or making new friends or having people that you can really bond with in your life. And that's sad to me, right? Again, it makes that inner child not feel so neglected when you let it out. And then it also can work on the deeper trauma parts too, when you kind of when it feels like it can be free and be its true authentic self. I'm saying it as if it's not a part of us, but you know what I mean? Like when your inner child feels like, okay, I can laugh and have fun and do all this, like I can also work on this trauma and heal this part of me too. I hope that makes sense. I think it's also something that like I want to go back to therapy and work on. I know, again, I mentioned a couple of my therapist friends and my mom talks about this, but there's like this whole like inner family system that therapists use to kind of like pick apart why we are the way we are. And there's different parts of our brains that hold on to different things. So like our 6-year-old self might hold on to something a lot differently than our 16-year-old self. While those are both children, it looks a lot different. And then again, my 6-year-old self and my 16-year-old self and my now 26-year-old self are all going to hold on to trauma, and maybe the same exact situation happens to all three of those versions of me, but the way that it makes me feel at different times is obviously going to be different because of the things that I know and the tools that I have now. And I think it's really a neat aspect of therapy that I've kind of started learning more about, and I definitely want to integrate that and experience that type of therapy and mental health care, because I think just the more that I've been researching and talking about our inner child with people, it's been so eye-opening, right? And like I want to do more work, and this little 30-minute episode of a podcast is just kind of the basis, like all of these episodes are, that's just starting the conversation. But I encourage people to do their own research, talk to your therapist, talk to your family, your friends. If you have a therapist friend, talk to them. I think it's all really important work that we could all be doing. And again, this time of year is like the best time of year because it's such a magical time and it's so catered towards kids and bringing out those childlike, memories and traditions and parts of us. So yeah, I hope that all made a little bit of sense. I love finding these little random things that just kind of spark in me and I just like write down so many notes because I always say that I have a long list of episode ideas, and I do, that is true, but sometimes I look at it and I'm just like, none of these are sparking joy in me, and then something will happen throughout the week and I'm like, oh, that's what I want to talk about on today's episode, and it just fires me up. And that's why I love doing these episodes, because I think so much, especially now living alone. I just think and talk out loud a lot, or to Puda a lot, and it's nice to have somewhere that I can actually like formulate all my thoughts into a cohesive episode and get them out. And even if no one listens to this, or if 2 people listen to this, or if one person takes anything away from this, it's still such a therapeutic experience for me, and that's why I'm doing it. And I remind myself of that because the whole point of this podcast is to not care what people think. And I think even that stems back to my childhood, again, with the performing. And, I literally have 2 angels on this earth as my parents. So I am so blessed and grateful and privileged to not have to fight or perform for their love. But in other areas of my life, right? Like I was competing in dance and cheerleading at a very, very young age. And so you're performing for a score that validates how good you are at something. Like that is so crazy to think about. And it definitely affects how you move through the world as an adult, right? And so obviously now with things that I create and do online and share my passions and stuff, like I'm trying to retrain my brain to thinking like, okay, this isn't something that I'm even making a scent from. This is a passion project, so I don't have to worry about if, people like it enough that it's like my living or whatever. Like, I just get to put something out there that is so healing and so therapeutic to me that like that is what it's all about. And so I'm grateful that people listen to it. That is like the cherry on top. But for me, it's just such a therapeutic and exciting, and it's honestly healing my inner child just doing these episodes, because so many of the things I talk about are things that I've felt and, have experienced since childhood. And I think a lot of us have. So it's exciting that maybe some people will take some things away from these episodes. But yeah, I want everyone to kiss their inner child today. Give your inner child a squeeze. Maybe write your inner child a letter. I think I'm going to do that as my journal prompt today or tomorrow, because that just feels right. And I have so many things that I want to tell her. And also, I mentioned this in the mindfulness episode, but the journal prompts about reflecting on what your past versions of yourself would think of your current version of yourself is so healing. And it only feels right to bring that up as well in this episode, because it's just so funny, the things that you like stress about as a kid, and now you like have this life that you couldn't even like dream of when you were a little baby, wee little one. So it's so cool. Yeah. Kind of rambled on there at the end, but that's just my final thoughts after, doing this episode and doing some research and just the way I've been reflecting and feeling recently. I hope all of that made sense. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Sorry it is a day late. Like I said, there's some construction happening in the podcast studio, and I was building a couch for like 2 days. So we will have some exciting things. Oh, I guess I just spoiled a little bit. There is a little bit of a couch situation happening, okay? So no more desk, no more nook. We are getting upgraded, and it's going to be really fun for having guests on as well, because we can sit on the couch together and talk and all the things. So that's your spoiler. If you made it this far, you got a little spoiler. So lucky you. And if no one's told you recently, I love you. I'm proud of you. You're kicking life's butt, and keep up the amazing work. And I will see you guys all next week. I'm still deciding if I want to take a week or 2 off for the holidays, but I feel like if I do, I won't freaking start again. So we're gonna keep going. So I will most likely see you guys the day after Christmas. Is that what that is? Maybe that Friday we'll get back on here. So I love you guys all so much. I hope you have a fabulous rest of your weekend, and I will talk to you all in the next one. Bye.